Welcome back to the episode. Just another friendly reminder to like, comment, and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Um, we're just on the cusp of August. It's July 30th. I know you and I personally, we're chomping at the bit, for any type of football. We finally got some football. It's not going to be pretty football. We got some football tomorrow, July 31st. Our Lions kick off the season, the Hall of Fame game against Harbaugh and the Chargers. So looking forward to that. But today we're just going to chat about, some of the stuff we've seen in training camp, what we might expect tomorrow as far as who's playing, who's not playing, and kind of go from there with it. But yeah, I'll just guess kind of start things off. Yeah, I'll kick it over to you. Just wanted to see, some of the things you've just heard as far as like highlights and such from training camp thus far and what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, so I would say, wonderful time of year. It's always great when, you're sitting around just thinking about the hope of all your football teams and, all that good stuff. So it's a great time of year. And, I'm similar to us, every podcast out there's got some boots on the ground. They're watching, reporting back what they're hearing. And I'm loving what they hear. I guess the first thing that stands out would be just, and I hope it's not too much hyperbole, but just how physical the practices have been. And
Yeah,
Dan Campbell having to step in and kind of tell people, hey, we steel sharpen steel, but we can't cut each other's heads off. So it's that's a big story to me. Just that I think that shows a little bit of the culture, just the type of players we're drafting, people who are fighters and go forward on that. So that's the first thing that stands out to me. Other thing is us trying to figure out what we're doing with the O line. You hear kind of who's coming in and out, who's maybe not quite up to game type speed or even early training camp speed. I heard some things about players not being as fit as they need to. At least that's what I heard about Panay Sewell a couple of times, that he might not be as physically fit as he will be week one.
yeah,
And all that type of stuff. So it's kind of those are the two big storylines I would say stand out to me. And just outside of that, just excited to see this first preseason game, kind of obviously the young guys, who's going to be out there, who's going to dominate, who's going to jump off the screen that maybe we don't know of, on-sign free agent, guy that's, maybe overlooked, we drafted last year or something, that's what we're looking for is just some players that hop off the screen during these preseason games, some unexpected players that hop off the screen.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely heard a lot of the same things as far as practice being too physical. Dan Campbell got to kind of be like, all right, like y'all got to relax. That's how you know it was getting a little too far. I heard he had to kick a guy out because there's no pads on. There, one player's like bring guys to the ground, and that's something you don't want somebody getting a separated shoulder, no
Right.
pads on because guys are out there, they're trying to earn their spot and make a roster spot, but there is like a line that you gotta not cross when it comes to some of these players, especially some of these guys we really gonna need come the start of the season. So that's always great to hear. I think I've been hearing some good things around the O line. Obviously, Ragnar, that'll be a huge loss. I do like that. At least as of right now, it sounds like our Michigan man, Graham Glasgow, is going to most likely be the center. At least what they say as of July 30th. It might be something else I read was might be a scenario where Ratledge, he starts off at guard and then maybe they move him to center, a couple years down the road, and that tends to happen a lot with those interior players that kind of just end up rep in between both positions. And I think it'd be good for, Glasgow to, be that anchor for us. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that's what he played primarily when he was in college.
Mm-hmm.
He graded out decent. He's played at center a couple times. Like last year, he graded out pretty well um, against the Bears when Ragnar was out for a game. He was kind of like average, overall. So I think that's something that at least we have somebody there that knows what they're doing. Going to have some good chemistry with Goff, and then I also think we're a little more solidified there than what the media has given us credit for. We got this guy Christian Mahogany that was like a fifth round pick, and only because he has some injury issues. He actually missed all of training camp last year because he was sick. But he ended up playing um, at guard 2 games last year, and he graded out, and this is using PFF. That's really only what we have at our disposal. He graded out like 85% in 2 games. So that gives me, just confidence there that we really just got to kind of figure out the center and the guard. Not that they're saying not important positions or center and right guard, but I think we have a lot more continuity there than we're being given credit for. But yeah, all in all, you're hearing great things about JMO. You're hearing, Tim Patrick looking a lot better. Him coming off, last year he just came off the Achilles, so now he's got another year under his belt to get away, another year away from that injury. You're hearing Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph. A lot of these guys are just, playing a lot better, and Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. So it sounds like guys are, off to a good start overall when it comes to training camp, which is a great sign.
Yeah, no, I think you made a great point with kind of just that center position because obviously Frank Ragnow, top 5 center in the
All
league, just
pro.
retiring, right out the right out the gate before we even got to the gate, midsummer. I think is a he waited. It was not to say we would have opted. We potentially would have operated differently if he retired slightly earlier and we at the beginning of free agency, or maybe in the draft, or who knows what would happen. But also he did it early enough where we can address it before we you know get too deep into the summer camp here. So I think it'd be a big ask to ask Ratledge to start at center right out the gate. I do know it happens from time to time a rookie center, but it's few and far between. I think the center kind of being the heartbeat, the brain to the operation from the O line as far as calling out blitzes, calling out coverages, which way the line is sliding, just overall communication and comfortability with the quarterback. And just kind of how that has to be seamless. It's the biggest thing that gets overlooked is just how if you have a good center quarterback flow there, it's not you don't see drop snaps, you don't see them hiking the ball in the quarterback's gut when he's still yelling out things to the team, trying to dictate and coordinate people. So I think that is you would rather go with the proven vet for probably a majority of the season. And I feel like I've heard that Graham says he prefers to play guard, but
Hmm.
you don't always get what you want, and you kind of got to, for lack of a better term, take one for the team this year around and hold that down. So we have the consistency from that spot. We know what we're getting, even though he is probably I hate to say it, a half a step behind, but it's that's major. And then so kind of that flow, and then obviously we know what we got at Panay Sewell. I've heard a couple different reports that I think he had a baby over the summer. His wife had a baby over the summer. I think he's kind of just got a lot of things happening. But I know he's a warrior. He's going to come up and come to play when it's time. And him and Hutch, they're going to get each other ready for that first season. Those
Oh
are
yeah.
two all pros going against each other, snap after snap throughout practice. So, I will say that I don't want to call it a center controversy because I think it's night and day that you should probably start Graham, but maybe potentially Ratledge gets a lot of snaps at center during this preseason just to get more familiar with it, kind of ease him into it that way, get as many snaps as you can with him. But I do think probably by mid-August you want to have that figured out with whatever you're doing and get each player comfortable at that position that they're going to be playing the majority of.
Sure. Yeah, and I think, Ratledge, I think they said he played little center in college. I think he was playing against Jalen Carter and, some of them other type of guys in that interior over at Georgia. So you like to hear at least some familiarity there, but he was really like I think he was like all SEC at guard. So you want to kind of have your rookie play somewhere where he's comfortable to kind of start off, do this for about a year. Honestly, don't know how much time Glasgow got left playing either. I mean, he's coming up on 10, 12 years, was pretty banged up a lot last year, which is why he didn't play as great, sometimes. So yeah, I mean, I think yeah, and I think it's just gonna play. I think it would be, good. I mean, I think it's gonna kind of maybe sputter a little bit coming out the gate. But I hope and assume that, lean on the run, to kind of, help the offensive line gel. Ben Johnson's not in the building anymore, so I don't think we're going to be as pass happy as we can be, as we have been in the past. And I say I think that's just a hope. I don't know for sure what it's going to look like or not,
I
but
can. That's one of the questions I wrote down, so we can circle back on that, or if you just want to dive in
yeah,
it now.
yeah,
Um,
go ahead, yeah, we can.
no, so I see a lot. You watch any podcast, from like a Lions fan base, they're dogging out Ben Johnson, saying he basically was a figurehead and this and that. And I'm not saying there might not be a little truth to that. I do think he is a bit of a mastermind, but maybe not head coach material.
Yeah.
But I look at the John Morton. I'm a little so what I read slash watched on a couple of videos is when they talk about the scrimmage versus the offense and the defense, they said that the defense was kind of kicking their ass like the first 5 series. I think the defense gets 2 points every time they get a stop. It was 10-0 before the offense kind of picked up. And they were saying that there was a lot of deep shots. He was pushing the ball downfield a lot, and because of that, the O line was getting tested. Hutch was getting back there. They said
Okay.
Jack Campbell had a sack, so that makes me wonder, or were you trying something? Are you kind of seeing how it fits, or is that kind of more your game plan? And then I dove into him, John Morton, a little deeper. He's an ex wide receiver. First of all, he's from Auburn Hills, which is crazy, but he's an ex wide receiver.
Western.
Played a wide receiver at Western, had a couple of minor stints across the NFL for a hot second, and has been on the offensive side of the ball as a receiver coach or passing game coordinator every step of the road. So that just made me kind of wonder and question, in his heart of hearts, is he more of a pass first guy, or is he a whatever is working? Let's move the ball. Because there's two different type of, I think, offensive coordinators or offensive minds. Some guys, for lack of a better term, let's say Rich Rod. Rich Rod, he wanted to score points using his system. And
Yeah.
then you have other coaches where I can kind of coach what I have and lean into this. We got a running quarterback, let's lean into it. We got a dynamic backfield, let's lean into that. And I kind of wonder, what's he going to do as far as that goes? Because these two running backs need to be leaned on. And
I agree.
and so I wonder, with kind of reading that the ball was getting stretched down the field a lot in longer deep passes, and he comes from like a heavy offensive passing game coordinator, at like 3 different stops, wide receiver, kind of just a little bit of questions I have as far as his true identity. What's he gonna lean on?
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a good call. I didn't.
yeah,
I wasn't really aware of a lot of that. I mean, I know
yeah,
I really just knew he came from Denver, and he was with us a couple years back. So yeah, I would
yeah.
say
So yeah, real quick, he was the Denver game passing coordinator. I think he's been
mhm,
Saints game passing coordinator, and he was a
OC at the
strategic
Jets.
offensive coordinator or something with us.
Yeah.
So it just just things to wonder and things to think about. Not saying he can't be dynamic, but I think we know we have weapons. I think we need to figure out how we want to win, and that's leaning on that line, which
Yeah.
helps Goff, which helps the defense. Which it's a
Sure.
whole big equation here if we do it right.
Yeah. No, I think and I think you know how I am. I'm always like lean on the run
Mm-hmm.
to open up the pass. And I feel like one thing too is kind of going into the season. I do hope that the defense is where they need to be. Because my thought process is like if we were like a top 3 offense last year, we were like a bottom half defense because of all the injuries and everything. I wouldn't be, mad at us being like a top 10 offense or a top 12 offense if our defense is more in that like top 15, top 12 range as far as, as long as we stay healthy, which I think we can be. We just haven't been able to keep everybody, healthy throughout the season in order to kind of see what that'll look like, at
Right.
scale. But I do think this is like the best defense we've had. We got some guys that are still kind of coming back from injury, like, Wingo, Malcolm Rodriguez, and Lee McNeil, of course. So, I would hope that the defense, kind of what we talk about with Michigan, you hope that the defense is kind of ready to go out the gate to give the offense some time to kind of pick up speed to where we're like getting into these shootouts with some of these teams where like the offense they've had to be perfect for so much the last couple of years where you hope you can get a little bit more support from the defense this year, earlier on in the season to help the offense kind of get things going. Because it is going to take some time with the O line being retooled a little bit for sure.
Yeah. No, I definitely will, and I think it's probably that's um kind of the summarization I got from the scrimmage they have versus offense and defense. Defense, it's kind of like sharks smell blood in the water. Offense is
Yeah,
they're playing, a little bit of chess. They're trying to figure out if this works and did this work
yeah,
in progression, or is
I like
we
that.
completely forgot to even figure this part out in this game. So I think as the practices go along, they'll probably begin to pick it up a little bit. Uh, but no, I agree with you on that, and it's the deep. It makes me wonder. Last you hear so often so many people talk about how they're gonna. I literally heard people say he's gonna unlock the offense. I think that's ridiculous. But what I because you how do you unlock an offense that was top two? Well, probably one last year. I think first in
Yeah.
points, top three or something in
First or
yards.
second, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how you can unlock that, but what I would say is let's like I texted you the other day, let's know when to peak. Let's, we don't
Hmm.
need to be dropping 50 balls and having the whole, looking like a college team basically in week 10 and then not having it work at all, in the come postseason when it matters. So maybe a more healthy team overall where offense is seventh in the league, but defense might be 8 or 10, and I think
Yeah.
that's a
Balanced.
recipe for um winning games into late in January. Also, kind of what's the split look like as far as running ball and passing it? I think with the two running backs, we could definitely have a 2,000-yard backs if you really want to lean on that.
I did hear they
So
put on having Gibbs and Montgomery on the field more, and Gibbs like in the slot,
yeah,
running some routes and such too, which would be interesting.
yes, that would be interesting. Because we used them pretty interchangeably last year. I mean, Gibbs did a little bit of that, but it was much more. This is Gibbs series. This is Montgomery
Montgomery's.
series. This is good, and but yeah, I kind of wonder how that would work out. And so what do you think the odds are we have 2,000-yard backs this year?
Uh, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I think it'll probably be more like I could also see it being like Gibbs like around like 1,000, and then 600, maybe like 500, 600 yards receiving, and then Montgomery maybe at like 800, 900, yards rushing with like 300 to 400 yards. I think it could be
Mhm.
kind of like maybe like 200 to 300 yards receiving. I think they could both kind of like hover around it. I mean, they probably would have did it a couple like probably last year and the year before if things would have worked out just like a tad bit differently. I think
Yeah,
Gibbs was like one big run away from being over 1,000. Montgomery hit 1,000, and then Gibbs went over 1,000. Montgomery got hurt, last year. So yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. And I do think, like you said, I think that does have to be our bread and butter. I mean, obviously, you know, say Jameson Williams will take the top off and open things up quite a bit to where we can run that ball a lot. St. Brown, we hardly even talk about him anymore because we already know he's gonna be good for
yeah,
95 catches, 1,300
Mr.
yards, eight
Consistency.
touchdowns.
Yeah,
And then Sam Laporta, I mean, I think that's somebody that you don't hear anything about really anymore after his rookie year, to where I mean that could be a guy that could also pop off and end up being like a top five, top three tight end this year as well. So and they didn't even mention Tim Patrick. They got some
when you
crazy
mentioned Tesla,
weapons. They didn't even mention Isaac Tesla, who's been making some pretty solid plays. It looks
no,
like in
no,
training camp.
I'm half joking, but no. So I think you kind of mentioned it. So the couple of questions I had for you were odds of 2,000-yard backs, and then you mentioned JMO's odds. JMO passes St. Brown this year in receiving yards.
Man, I mean, definitely there. I'd say it's pretty high. I'd say it's a pretty high chance. I'd say I wouldn't surprised if it happens. I mean, he
Yeah,
had 58 catches for just over 1,000 yards and missed 2 games last year.
right.
I don't know his I'm around St. Brown's stats for that, but we know he's more of like a possession guy. He'll get you 8 to 9 catches for like 75 yards. Jamo can get you, three
You
to
need
four
75
catches for
yards
a
on
buck.
one
Yeah, for a
one.
buck 20.
Yeah,
And he's getting
he's
back into his
75 to the crib on a little bubble screen.
Yeah, he's getting into his
um,
zone. I mean, we saw him take a reverse 65 yards in the playoffs,
yeah.
last
So
year.
St. Brown had 115 for 1260 and 12 touchdowns. 100
Yeah,
having 115 is crazy.
yeah,
But no, I think I actually agree with you. I think St. Brown's going to hold it, but I think it's going to be much more probably right around here. Let's say 12, let's say 1,300 for St. Brown and 1150 for J Moore or something like that. Um, where St. Brown is, probably damn near doubled him in catches again. He's going to be up around that 100-yard catch, and J Mo's probably in the 60s or 70s maybe. Um,
yeah. I'm with you.
and you brought up Laporta. I think Laporta is a mismatch nightmare, but also I wonder it's weird how, I mean, he had a pretty good year, but it wasn't, you would think off that first year he was going to be 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns the second year, but maybe a
Yeah.
little slight step back. But I think he's also very solid and just a mismatch nightmare. So I think when he goes off, he's going to go off. In other games, he might be kind of quiet.
Hmm.
I think it's going to be real feast or famine with him.
Yeah, because I mean, in the drop, yeah, he said, I mean, he first year 889, 10 touchdowns, second year 726, 7 touchdowns. I don't know if he missed games or not, last year as far as that's concerned, but and this was crazy. It's like we talk about how took a step back. I mean, those are some great tight
Yeah.
end numbers, like elite tight end numbers. So yeah, no, I would be curious. I think I only played like 15, 16 games last year. So that's another yeah. I mean we got weapons by the dozen. There's guys that might Tim Patrick. I mean, he was able to come in, pretty much after training camp and pop off. He played with Morton when he was over in Denver.
Mhm.
So there's a little bit of familiarity there. I think we're positioned for some guys we just gotta have a lot of weapons. The defense are gonna have to find different ways to stop us. I think that's where like I think the run game will just kind of be like you hope they'll have it going and at least humming with that to keep everything
Yeah.
else open and yeah.
100%. This just to focus in on the Chargers a little bit this preseason. Obviously, preseason we get a glimpse of what the team will really
Yeah.
look like. But I think I am looking for. We joked about it earlier, but I am looking for Isaac Tesla. I think he's in prime spot. He's probably getting to get a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Let's see if he can produce. Let's see. I hear people say he might not be able to get the separation when it. That's like his big thing. Can he get the separation? And let's see him against some other guys that are fighting for NFL spots. If he can, if he's on the field for a couple of series as the one or two receiver, I'm excited to see what he can do. You brought up Giovanni Minute. What's his name?
Oh, Giovanni Manu, yeah.
Yeah.
Tackle.
I imagine somebody like him would get some snaps. Let's see. It's time for him to put up or shut up too. He's been around for a while. I know you say he had a couple of games, but
Oh,
you
that's Christian Mahogany. That's who I'm
Mahogany. I'm
talking
sure.
about.
Yeah, Mahogany.
Yeah.
But yeah, just lean into that. Minute. Time for him to step up too. As far as just your early
He's the
draft.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Canadian guy.
So I think that old line, if a couple of them guys step up, it solves a lot of our old line problems going forward. If not, I think this is when we begin to realize, hey, maybe this coming up draft, this guy
Get a
might
couple
not
more
work
in
out or
there.
whatever. So I think,
Yeah.
and then spoke about before we got on is Hooker, just kind of, seeing him kind of get the reins through for a couple of preseason games here. Excited to see what he can do. We know the talent he had coming out of Tennessee. Injury derailed him. He's not in exactly a prime spot to start with golf getting paid, all that stuff. But can you be a very solid backup that we know we can depend on? And I think we begin to see some of that in this preseason. Like you said, last year he was taking off a lot. So let's
Yeah.
see. I'm not mad at that. I'm never mad at that. But let's also see if you can stand in that pocket and just throw some lasers and
Run the offense, get some
yeah, run the
confidence.
offense as needed. But yeah, obviously break down, take off and run. But let's see if we can get some faith where we're not signing, Geno Smith or Philip Rivers or some shit off the couch. Come December, I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm hoping we're at.
Yeah, no, be good. Yeah, and that was one guy you brought up, Manu. I kind of forgot about, but they say he lost a little weight. He was
Mm-hmm.
working out with Taylor Decker in Phoenix.
Yep.
That's a good guy to, be around and some other old linemen that, playing pretty well in the league. And yeah, he's kind of a freak of nature. He
Yeah.
tested
What was
out
he? A
really
fourth round
well.
pick, I think.
Oh, he's a third.
Third. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
this time of year, this time around, we got to see, another roll of the dice. Someone working out, someone aren't. A guy, big 380-pound lineman. You're
6'7", 350.
350. Yeah.
Oh,
So
fourth round pick. Okay.
fourth round.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think somebody like that. I just want to see what they can do. Sometimes
Hmm.
not all projects continue. So it's kind of you know, uh, just trying to see what some of these boys got. But no, I'm excited for this. And I mean, we're not, like I said, just a small window of what we're getting, but I'm really liking some of the things I'm seeing from the practice scrimmages, team versus team. some of them JMO plays, one-on-ones, you're seeing some plays that are making you happy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, it's like I said, this football is back. How about you? But I'm gonna try to. I'm not gonna lie, I'm probably not watching that game front to back just for the love of the game. Just watch as much as I can because it do get a little ugly come to third, fourth quarter. But especially if
Yeah.
Hooker's out there, get some good Hooker action. Check him out. See what he got for us. See what he can do. You said Tesla, some of these other guys. He drafted a receiver from Georgia in like the seventh round. I'm blanking on his name right now. See if I can pull it up here real quick. Um,
Oh, yeah, I can't think of it either.
yeah, I can't think what his name is, but um,
But no,
yeah,
no, I'm
smaller
with you.
guy, so it might be like a replacement for I'm blanking on everybody's name right
Patrick,
now.
Tim Patrick.
For like Raymond, he'd be like a replacement for like Khalif Raymond maybe down the road. Just a little jitterbug and just kind of catch a screen route, take it to the crib. Yeah, just looking forward to seeing what some of these other guys got that will be playing a lot. Going into the season. Ahmad Hassanin, that's somebody
Yeah, you'll get a lot of snaps.
he might be able to do too. So, but yeah, looking forward to it and excited to see what the team has tomorrow, starting off the season.
Yes, sir. We're about to end it. You got anything else for the people?
That's all I got. Talk to y'all next week.
Peace.